Warning, this video contains Code Geass spoilers. All the spoilers. All of them. What is up everybody, it's Animac here for Anime Uproar, and this video is a result of all the awesome comments and feedback that we've been getting on our recent Code Geass videos. We also recently hosted a special Code Geass theories live stream right here on our channel, and a whole bunch of you guys came and together we came up with the theories that we are using in this video. So thank you guys for coming out. We are planning similar live streams for Code Geass and a whole bunch of other anime. So if you're new to the channel and you want to be a part of it, feel free to subscribe, we'd love to have you. And without further ado, number 10, Lelouch is immortal. Now this theory is not so shocking anymore, but it certainly was when the series first finished airing. And the reason we're including it here at number 10 is because it is the basis for a whole bunch of other theories. According to this theory, Lelouch does not die when Suzaku stabs him at the end of R2. Instead, Lelouch survives because he has code. He is an immortal being. There are two different arguments for how Lelouch obtained code. The first and more popular one is that he obtained it when he killed Charles. Charles got code by killing his brother V2, and when Lelouch kills Charles inside the world of C, Lelouch gets Charles's code from him. The second theory is that Lelouch got his code from C2. This means that C2 gave up her code and gave it to Lelouch instead so that he could live. Personally, I prefer the Charles theory, because in the anime, the only time we actually see code transferring from one person to another is when the original holder of the code dies. So in the case of C2, the nun dies, and in the case of Charles, V2 dies. Those who believe the C2 theory actually believe that a person with code can transfer their code voluntarily to another person. They don't have to die to do it. But because we don't actually get to see that in the anime, and because I want C2 and Lelouch to be immortal together rather than one of them getting old while the other doesn't, I prefer the Charles theory. And if you'd like to see a detailed analysis of the Lelouch getting his code from Charles theory, check out my top 3 reasons Lelouch is still alive video. The link is in the description. Shout out to Rohan Saeed for his contribution on this one. Number 9. Lelouch will give Geass power to others. If we accept that Lelouch now has code, that means that he can give the power of Geass to others through a contract. He could do it to characters that we already know, such as Suzaku or Colin, or he could do it to a bunch of brand new characters. At any rate, this would mean that Lelouch could potentially become the mentor and mastermind behind a whole new generation of powerful Geass users, which would be pretty cool to see in the sequel. Shout out to Tyler Zeaza and Ecoms108 for their feedback on this one. Number 8. Lelouch has both code and Geass. This is one that I actually didn't think about at first, but a whole bunch of you commented and pointed this out to me. I mean, look at all those comments. Thank you guys. According to this theory, if we assume that Lelouch really got his code from Charles, and we know that he got his Geass power through a contract with C2, because C2 is still alive, this could mean that Lelouch now possesses code and Geass at the same time. This is because the fact that C2 is still alive could mean that the contract she has with Lelouch is still valid, and some argue that the whole meaning behind the title of Code Geass is pointing to the fact that Lelouch now has both code and Geass at the same time. This is a really interesting theory, I like it a lot, and if it's true, it means that Lelouch will be an extremely powerful force in the sequel. In the new PV that recently leaked for the sequel, we do appear to see Lelouch's eye with Geass, so that could mean that this theory is in fact true, but we'll have to wait and find out. Number 7. There will be a bloody civil war in the Code Geass sequel. This one was proposed by Vector Maximus and Soulmakka, and basically this theory states that the powerful nobles of Britannia and other factions within the world of Code Geass are going to rebel against the Zero Requiem and wage a bloody civil war against the Black Knights, and this will be the major conflict in the Code Geass sequel. Geass powers as well as powerful new weapons could be part of this civil war. And because Nunnally is now the Empress of Britannia, there is also the potential that Nunnally could be kidnapped or even killed by one of the factions, which would force Lelouch to come out of hiding. Another quick thank you to That-Gundam-Guy. Number 6. the sequel will feature a fake Zero or an imposter Zero. In the original series, we are repeatedly told that Zero is a mask, a symbol, and we know at the end of R2, Suzaku actually assumes the role of Zero from Lelouch. And we also know that throughout the series, C2 impersonates Lelouch on multiple occasions as Zero. This idea came mostly from Soulmakka, but the theory is that someone could assume the role of Zero, impersonate Zero in order to frame him in some terrible deeds. So let's say someone is interested in starting a civil war related to the previous point. They could impersonate Zero, do something in his name that creates a terrible conflict and destroys the Zero Requiem. If this happens in the sequel, it would be an interesting twist, and again it would be one of those things that would surely force Lelouch to come out of hiding in order to fight against this Zero imposter. Number 5. The return of Charles? After being absorbed by C's world in R2, could Charles potentially return in a non-physical form to become the main villain once again? In the OVA Akito the Exiled, a being with code manifests in a non-physical or spiritual form and explains that she is a representation of pure consciousness. Since we know that Charles spent decades studying the world of C and the power of Code and Geass, so could he somehow manipulate the world of C in order to appear once again in non-physical form, in order to appear as pure consciousness? Shout out to Briggs from All Day Anime for helping me out on this one. And while this is an interesting theory, I personally hope it doesn't happen. I know that a lot of you guys were talking in the chat and in the comments that you think Schneisel or one of the old villains might play an important role in the sequel, but I personally hope that that doesn't happen. Those guys, Charles, Schneisel, they're old news. I want to see new, more interesting and more powerful villains, so I'm hoping that that's what's gonna happen. Number 4. New forms and higher levels of Geass. A lot of you guys mentioned that new forms of Geass power could be featured in the sequel, including Blue Geass, Green Geass, and of course, Super Saiyan God Geass. Okay, maybe not the last one, but we do know that Layla from Akito the Exiled has a special kind of Geass that manifests as blue and that she actually got from C2 when she was still a child. We also know that Jeremiah Gottwald, or Orange, has an artificial Geass canceller that also manifests as blue, except whereas Layla's Geass sign in her eye is actually right side up, Orange's Geass sign is upside down. And in the new PV or teaser trailer for the Code Geass sequel, we see what looks like Lelouch's eye, and it appears to briefly flash green before turning the normal Geass color. And this has led a lot of people to speculate that perhaps green is a sign of a higher level of Geass that Lelouch has achieved. I think this is very possible, and I would definitely like to see new and higher forms of Geass featured in the sequel. I also think that we could see other forms of artificial Geass emerge in the sequel, especially if it features a big civil war or conflict. Because think about it, if you can mass produce artificial Geass power, you could create an army of Geass users that would definitely be a big threat to Lelouch and to the Black Knights. Something like that would certainly force Lelouch to reach a higher level of Geass, and I would definitely like to see something like that in the sequel. Like I said, a lot of you guys commented on this, and thank you all very much. Number 3. The ancient origins of Code and Geass. In the original series, it is established that the 8 thought elevators that are scattered around the globe and that Charles uses to activate the Ragnarok connection were actually built by a mysterious ancient civilization of beings with code. In order to build these powerful structures, this ancient civilization must have been very advanced, and it actually reminds me of the whole Atlantis myth in our own world. In fact, I believe that this frame from the scene where Lelouch first makes a contract with C2 in the very first episode of Code Geass actually shows the members of this ancient civilization. You can see that they have the code sign on their foreheads, and their clothing also looks ancient. You can see that this clothing is different from any of the modern clothing that we see in the world of Code Geass, and it is also very different from the clothing that is used by the modern Geass Order, which was established by Charles and V2. In fact, in the new PV, we also see shots of what look like 2 ancient temples, which seems to suggest that the ancient origins of Geass and the civilization that first created the thought elevators could be an important part of the sequel. Shout out to Charles Cisneros on this one. Number 2. Ancient aliens? In the same scene where Lelouch gets his Geass from C2 for the first time, The next frame we see after the members of that ancient civilization is what looks like a planet in outer space. Could this planet be a clue about the ancient civilization that created the thought elevators in the first place? Are these beings actually aliens who colonized multiple planets? And do they possess alien technology that could make them a brand new threat to the world of Code Geass? I first mentioned this ancient aliens theory in a previous video, and if you want to check that one out, the link is in the description so you can find it there. Lelouch v Britannia himself commented that he thinks that the planet shown in the frame is actually Jupiter. All hail Lelouch. In the first episode of R2, when C2 helps Lelouch break Charles's Geass, we actually see a close-up of this same planet with the sun in the background. The planet does indeed look a lot like Jupiter, and the same planet also appears in C's world as the representation of the collective consciousness or God. But why Jupiter? What is the meaning of Jupiter in this context? I actually found an article on astrology.com that could be helpful. The article says the following: Jupiter is the thinking person's planet. As the guardian of the abstract mind, this planet rules higher learning and bestows upon us a yen for exploring ideas, both intellectually and spiritually. Intellectually speaking, Jupiter assists us in formulating our ideology. In the more spiritual realm, Jupiter lords over religions and philosophy. A search for the answers is what Jupiter proposes, and if it means spanning the globe to find them, well, that's probably why Jupiter also rules long distance travel. Now this seems to say a lot to me, because if you think about it, C's world is all about pure consciousness, collective unconscious, right? So abstract thinking, philosophical, moral ideas, these are all things that Charles is definitely obsessed with, that Charles clashes with Lelouch with. So the symbolism is real. Even the whole thing about Jupiter searching, scouring the globe for answers seems to represent the 8 thought elevators that was scattered around the globe, and Charles spent his life studying them so that he can activate the Ragnarok connection. So now the question is whether showing us Jupiter is just symbolic, or whether it means something more, whether it means that there are beings with code on other planets, and that perhaps they even created thought elevators on these other planets, and that long distance travel through space might actually be a crucial part of the plot in the sequel. We don't know for sure yet, but I really think that these are interesting questions, so I hope that the sequel gives us some answers. And number 1, the ancient beings who created Code and Geass have advanced beyond physical form, and they now want to destroy all of humanity. As I mentioned earlier, in the final episode of Akito the Exiled, a being with code appears to the main character Layla in spiritual form and explains that she and others like her are representations of the collective consciousness rather than humans themselves. And she even states that humans with Geass only possess a small fragment of Geass power. The actual power of Geass is far greater than humans can imagine. This makes us wonder if these ancient beings with code became so advanced that they moved beyond physical form and became a collective consciousness, much like the anti-spirals in Gurren Lagann. This same being in Akito the Exiled actually implies that humans are not worthy of the power of Geass. So what if, just like the anti-spirals in Gurren Lagann think that humans are too dangerous and have to be destroyed to protect the universe, what if these ancient beings conclude that humans are unworthy of using Geass, that they are too dangerous, and that the entire human race must be eradicated? The ancient beings might come to this conclusion because Charles decided to mess with the 8 thought elevators and to activate the Ragnarok connection, like our friend Der Kaffeenator pointed out in his comment. I think that something like this would be the most shocking and the most interesting twist that could possibly happen in the sequel. A powerful race of beings with code that is advanced beyond physical form decides that the human race deserves to be eradicated. Something like this would certainly force Lelouch to come out of hiding and to face these beings head on, because now he would not only be protecting Nunnally and his friends, he would have to protect the entire human race. Now, wouldn't that be an interesting way of raising the stakes for for the sequel. And those were the 10 wildest theories that we came up with together for Code Geass Season 3. If you have any theories of your own that we didn't mention, be sure to leave them in the comments because we'd love to hear from you. And if you'd like to be a part of future discussions and featured in future videos, be sure to subscribe. And if you enjoyed this video, make sure you like it and share it with your friends. So many of you guys have been active on the channel lately and you made this video possible, and it really means a lot to us. Thank you. And along with everyone else that we mentioned in the video, I want to also give a quick shout out to Macklenot, BaekHyun04, Zubhan WC3, Creep Elen, Dark Sonic 786, Lediga, Beanboyine, Rafael Reis, Misty Flare 19, Hani Alzahrani, Akio Anon, Misqowiec, and Prabrheet Singh. Thanks a lot everybody, and you will find the full list of contributors, and there's a lot of them, in the description. Making this video was a lot of fun, chatting with you guys was a lot of fun, and I can't wait to do it again. And until next time, see ya, Space Cowboys.